Hellraiser. Speaking of hell on earth. So we're talking
about the really great one.
We're talking about
We're talking about really great one.
Hellraiser 2022, one of the top 3 of the 10 Hellraiser movies that exist.
I definitely give it top 4.
Yeah,
definitely. Maybe top 3, for sure top 4.
Yeah, it's in there for sure. So, and I mean, the best thing about Hellraiser, let me just get this out of here. Put this down here. Hellraiser 2022 basically is a extravaganza. I was really excited for it. And once again, the best thing about Hellraiser is that it's a popular IP in the horror community, which means you get really nice additions like this bad boy right here. So,
Wait, up here. Right here.
The thing about this, Francois, is you go up to somebody and you show them this.
Yep.
I'm trying to pick up a lady at a club.
Yeah.
You take this bad boy out and do this right here.
This is Alex's literal advice for dating.
I'm telling you right now, the amount of women that will fall to their knees for pure pleasure is beyond me.
Panties soaked. Can feel it.
Yeah, they're just like somebody opened up the box.
It's so sexy.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, the puzzle box, it's there. And there's a Blu-ray disc in it and 2 DVDs of movies that we're not talking about.
Yeah.
So, Hellraiser 2022, directed by David Bruckner.
This is Alex's literal advice as well. This is not
This is not a joke. This is not a joke.
If he wrote a book, he would put it in there, unironically, he would put it in there.
And there's one actually funny story about it too, is I made a joke about that. I did do exactly that with a girl that I was seeing at the time. And it did lead to some fun stuff. So, but I don't think it had anything to do with the box.
Okay, what the do they call it in the movie again? Hellraiser 2022.
Yeah, Hellraiser 2022, directed by David Bruckner. So I want to talk about this one because I would love to talk about Hellraiser, the original one, and Hellbound Hellraiser 2, because those are excellent movies. But this is one that I also had a lot that I would like to say about it, because last year when I wanted to talk about it, it just didn't get released to Canada for a while. And David Bruckner is a director that I really love. I think he's an outstanding director. So he's directed such movies as The Ritual, that was on Netflix. That's an outstanding movie about basically the descent in the woods, and they're being hunted by that deer thing. And then he did a really great movie called The Night House. And The Night House is just like this excellent thriller.
Which I actually disagree. Not that the film itself, it's not like it's a bad movie or anything.
Yeah.
But The Ritual, I love that movie.
That one's really good.
Really good. And then I remember The Night House got a lot of positive buzz.
Yeah.
And it was one of those movies that I saw and I'm like, okay.
You just didn't get it. See, it's for me, I saw the movie in theaters and it creeped the shit out of me.
Okay.
He also directed like the best segment in the first VHS movie, the one with that like vampire girl with the really big eyes and stuff like that. He directed that segment. And then he did I think it's called The Hospital, which is a segment from Southbound, which is a really good like backroads kind of horror anthology movie. And now he's back doing VHS 85 or 84 or whatever. So I'm excited for that lineup. You got Scott Derrickson in there, and I think he listened to our advice from the black phone. I think it's literally just going to be watching a tape and then just like the Sinister-esque like clips happening, and that's the movie. And I'm like, you did it. Like he listened.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Hellraiser. So the one thing that I was shocked about when I was watching this movie is that I think that it's much different from the original one. However, when you actually look about what the basic beats are for the story, it is almost exactly the same as the original one, just with like a new type of skin. So in the original one, you have like Frank and the wife, and it's like they're bringing people to get them so that he can like regenerate himself and everything. And in this one, they substitute Frank and that for the box, the actual cube itself. So the cube needs blood so that it can change into the 7 different configurations.
Yeah, that's what they call it the lament configuration.
The lament
like
configuration.
The original,
that's what it is.
And then they build upon that in the remake, and then it has like 7 configurations or whatever. And the lament configuration is like the first configuration.
That's what it is.
That's
the lament.
What they call
okay,
it.
yeah.
So it makes sense why you wouldn't remember. That's a hard name to remember, but it's a sick name.
And not to mention that all of the ones that they use to, I wrote them down. Like they're all L. Lament, Lore, Ladorant, Liminal, Lazarus, and Leviathan. So, and they all represent like life, love, Lord, power, whatever, resurrection. But yeah, like when I was rewatching it, I was like, wow, it really is. Even though it seems like it's much different, it really is the exact same movie in its own way. Somebody is feeding off the blood of other people, and they're dying in order to give more power towards this thing, so that they ultimately can escape hell. And as the main villain in this one, the Vincent character, to escape his torment that he got. He wanted ultimate pleasure, and then they shove like this giant wind up thing in his guts. And it's an excellent, like the performance of that is outstanding. Like every time it stops and then it goes back in, he feels all that pain, and he's like, oh my God.
It's like to describe this machine, it's like it has all his nerve endings taken out like string from a guitar. And then it's on this winding machine. So like imagine all the nerves in your body, and then it'll just randomly. I think part of it, right, is that it does it totally randomly. He can't expect it or anything.
It's like how it's made is that like it doesn't continuously go, because then he would become numb to the pain.
Exactly.
It will stop, and then it will kick back in, so that he will always feel pain.
And so it's just like
they preyed on my nerves, pulling them in random cycles, stopping just enough so I could never grow numb.
I thought the visual effects actually, when it falls out of him at the end, and then it's like his whole body is like reshaping itself and kind of like healing. I thought that looked really good.
Yeah.
There's like some really nasty close-ups of it where you see his spine kind of like coming back together and like sealing itself.
Because he basically has like a hole blown through him, right?
Yeah, it's like a full hole.
Yeah.
It's like magic making him still alive kind of deal, but it's absolutely disgusting. But yeah,
Kung Pao enter the fist style hole.
Yeah. There's like one big hole that actually happens.
Plug.
That actually slightly happens. Remember when it's like she first solves like this version of the box here, and then like they're just like, if you're not, the knife misses her hand. It's like if it's not your blood, then it has to be other people's blood. And then like she has a circle here, and then they push through, and it actually does like a hole through her.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I guess just to like kind of go into the plot really quickly here of what's happening is. So as we said, it's like it starts off right at the bat. You have this like rich billionaire kind of guy's home, and he has lured this Chad-esque pretty boy model man to come and solve the Lazarus like looking part of the box, so that it will become the Leviathan box.
Every time, so this is the initial form of the box.
Yeah, this is the first.
And then what happens is like you twist some knobs and dials and you solve it, and then it gives you a little nick with like some or other little apparatus, like a little knife, and then the thing feeds on your blood.
Yeah.
And then it will physically 3D transform into like another
the next
like,
stage.
It's like it's still a box, but it might be like a cylinder, and then it might be a pyramid, and then it whatever.
There's like one, it kind of looks like a star, and it has all these like interesting shapes to it. But yeah, the hand that it pricks is the person that will die. That's when the Cenobites show up and then take you, because your soul also is part of the price. The blood, the puzzle box will feed off your blood, and then you get harvested by these guys.
And the Cenobites are like these up demon, well, like hell priests, they call them in the lore.
Yeah.
But they're just like, they look like these BDSM demons, and they exist to make people suffer and hurt and kill.
They're like
people.
the archangels to the god, which is basically just this giant, like in Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, that thing that's like right in the middle. And it's like the last form, the Leviathan spinning one. That is like literally the god. Like that is like the being. And I was like, that's so interesting. They just worship this like literally this configuration. So I was like, that's really interesting. And I like that a lot. But yeah, basically he has some guy solve it. Everything goes to And then we cut 6 years in the future. We meet our main character, Riley. We basically go on this journey with her as she's a recovering addict and she's living with her brother, Matt, I believe is his name, and his boyfriend and their other like roommate. And that's one thing I'd like to mention is like, this is the one movie. It's like you see more and more now with like homosexual relationships in films. This one is done so great because it's not like, they're not addressing it, like hitting you over the head, like they are gay. It's just like, they're in a relationship, they are there, it's normal. There's nothing that you need to like pick at it or make the entire movie about it. So many movies like to do that now where it's like it's the centerpiece of it. They are a homosexual couple, so now the whole movie needs to be focused on this, or we have to have scenes where we have to address it and people will be like bigoted and do this and that. This one doesn't do it all. It's like they might as well, they could have been two guys or a guy and a girl or two girls, doesn't matter. All that matters is that Matt has a significant other. And I was just like, and I thought it's just like, I was so happy that with the director, David Bruckner, that he decided to not like draw too much attention onto that. And the casting was good. Both those people work really well in the roles that they are given. But basically, yeah, so it's like Riley's living with her brother. She's having some issues and everything like that, money-wise and stuff. And then her boyfriend ends up being like, hey, we're going to do this like quick little kind of heist. We're going to steal from this like billionaire's crate that's forgotten about this like one item. They think it's going to be like bonds or some sort of really valuable figure, but what it ends up being is the box. And she basically comes like attached to it, takes it, has some issues with the brother at the place, and then goes and solves it. And all hell breaks loose after that. As I was saying, it's like any person that gets pricked by it will have to be reaped for the hell priests, and then it goes on and moves forward. And that's the one thing that I liked. I thought for me, it was like a welcome to this, is it takes on that like curse kind of format where it's like we have to go on this venture to try and figure out what's going on with the box and everything. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have Matt, the character Matt, get killed, and then it's like, okay, well, or they think he's missing, but we know he's totally fucking dead. And it's just like, now we got to go and find out who this guy was. Who was Vincent? Where's this box come from? How do we stop this? You know, and it's just like, it almost feels like you can't stop it. It's like, regardless of what you do, it just keeps getting solved and people keep touching it, and it just keeps getting people in trouble. And I just really found the movie to be super enjoyable. Like, I was just like, it gives you a completely different feel from the original one. And I wouldn't necessarily say this movie is scary, but I do find it very entertaining, and I really love all of the kills in it. I like really enjoy every person's death, kill. I love the build-up. I think that the setups with the scenes when you see the Xenobites showing up are just like brilliant. That scene in the in that hospital with that lady, I thought was so good. It's like you have like them show up and they're all surrounding her and stuff, and it's just like excellent.
Save your breath. Full screen.
Oh, please, dear.
I think that when it comes to David Bruckner, his strongest aspects, which you may disagree with because he didn't like the Night House, but I think his strongest aspect is actually setting up a scene. I think that the way that he structures, like James Wan, a scene gives you this like kind of this anxiety, this tension. You're like what's going to happen? Like, are they going to get out of this? Who's going to die? Is it going to go the way I think it's going to go, or is it going to go in a different way? And he always finds unique ways to showcase it. And I really enjoyed that. And I think he was actually a really good choice to do a Hellraiser remake. Mm-hmm. So I did enjoy this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm torn about this movie because it wasn't what I was expecting. Like, I remember seeing it because like I really enjoy the Hellraiser films for the most part. Like, I really love the first one. I love the second one. I even really like the third one.
Oh, Hell on Earth is so much fun.
Yeah,
that
and then I
think
it's after that where it's like they're very
the
cheap.
Space.
And
the last one that was a theatrical
which
release.
One's Space?
That's Bloodline. That was the fourth one.
Okay, I like that one too.
That's the last one where they were like theatrical release, and then everything else was like a Miramax straight to video.
Okay, so I'll say that I like the first four, and then after that, they kind of lose me. But like, I was expecting something that was like a hard, I don't know, like reboot. I was kind of expecting like a big budget Hellraiser movie, like just something that's like, this is something I haven't seen before. It's gonna be something new. It's because they recast Pinhead, like the main Cenobite.
Yeah.
It's modern. It's been a long time since we've had like a decently budgeted Hellraiser movie.
Yeah.
And then I watched it, and I remember getting to the end and just being like, I don't really understand why this couldn't exist in the movies that already exist. Like, I don't know why we needed to recast Pinhead. I don't know why we need, like, that's kind of the big thing is like, it's like, to a degree, there's this new coat of paint on it because of the recasts and like there's redesigns of the characters, which it's like, which I enjoy for the most part. I enjoy, like the new looks of the Xenobites. I don't like the pearls, like they use pearls.
Oh yeah, that
like
was
a motif.
That was a weird thing. They all of their needles have like this little pearl element to them.
And I wasn't a big fan of that. It was
I would have liked
kind of odd.
I would have liked clips some more. I would have liked to have seen like kind of like almost like industrial clips like mixed in and pulling their skin back.
I remember I saw, it might have been concept art, and I think they might have even used it to a degree in a Hellraiser film. I can't remember, but I remember seeing this concept art for like a reboot of Hellraiser. That I was like, I like that conceptually, looks cool. Where it's like they had Pinhead, but rather because like he has these like what they look almost like acupuncture needles, like they're very thin and small and all over.
He had like the railway like spikes into his head. It was right? like those kind of big thick ones.
A little smaller than that. Like they were like rusty square nails.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And they were all over. And I'm like, I like that. Feels kind of like a new direction. Like I feel like I'm interested in that imagery, and that kind of goes in with the hell motif and stuff. I mean, I do like the clean look of the Xenobites as they exist, like in the OG, and like they fit in. They have their own. It's very iconic. It's very much their own feel. But I was interested in that reboot. But I'll say this with that idea for a rebooted Pinhead. But I'll say it's like with this 2022 movie. It was so weird because I was like, I left and I'm like, it's less violent
than you expect.
The first Hellraiser.
Oh
movie.
God, yeah.
And you'd think that if you're gonna bring Hellraiser back in the modern day, you'd up the ante with the violence, and they never really do. And like what's interesting is like the each Hellraiser movie up until the fourth one, I think they add to the lore, right? Like they give you a little more of like, here's the backstory and here's the whatever.
Definitely the second. And definitely the second.
In this one, they kind of keep with that trend where it's like they use the lament configuration and then they give the box this really cool like whole redo new thing. Yeah. And it's like, and once again, I was sitting there, I'm like, why couldn't they just have done that with like as it exists? Because I like it, the whole like we need to get to the last configuration.
Yeah,
like, this is a really cool thing for the box to be used for. It's not just this box that sits there and
you rub your finger over the holes and it's done.
There's like a little more. It's more involved in that. Yeah. And I guess like the parts that were lacking, like one was the violence to me was. We were talking we did a Midnight Meat Train review, and we were talking about the first Hellraiser movie a little bit. And we were talking about how it's like legitimately scary when you see Frank the first time or whatever, and they have some of that imagery, and like it's very uncomfortably violent. Like it's more violent than a lot of movies that come out today.
Jesus wept.
Shut your mouth!
And I remember when this movie was coming out, I'm like, oh yes, like this is a great opportunity for them to like harken back to that one and like bring some uncomfortable violence. Yeah, and it never really does that, which is a little like a downer for me. I'll say this, it's like it's such a serviceable Hellraiser movie. Like nothing about it makes me outright like that was bad. It's actually like the performances are really good. I like the cast. And some of the writing is maybe a little simple, like early millennium. Yeah, well, that's slasher movie.
That's the weird thing about it is the movie to me when I watched it. This might be why I like it more. I wonder. It fits like it really fits in place with like the early 2000s or like late 90s horror films. It feels like if you were doing a marathon, you put on the remake of House on Haunted Hill, 13 Ghosts, Hellraiser 2022 would fit perfectly in there.
I agree.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I wasn't expecting that, because it is a little jarring. You start the movie off and you're like, whoa, like right off the bat you see the city and everything where she's doing the deal with handing the things, and I was like what?
I can't remember if it's like Hungary or something, but it's like a European city.
Yeah,
and they just
yeah,
have it's like stock footage of like
Yeah,
a European
yeah.
city, but the sound is like. I should be looking at something horrific, but I'm just looking at a cityscape, and you're like, this is uncomfortable.
It feels like such a statement. It's just like Hellraiser has begun, and it's like burn.
And then I'll like, that's the thing is like I really enjoy that. And then they do the first scene's like pretty kind of cookie cutter by the numbers Hellraiser. Like you don't really see anything too up, but it's like, okay, good. We got the chains. We know what's going on. If you're a Hellraiser fan, you're like, I know exactly what's going on. But then the actual titles are terrible. That's something you do.
Very
like
simple.
A first timer would do an After Effects. Like
it looks like a very simplistic. I've noticed this though, and I'm not gonna blame the talent of these guys. I'm gonna blame like studio and how Hollywood is doing it now. That is like the last thing on their minds.
Very much looks like somebody just like typed the font, put in a basic glow effect, and it was like, why?
Yeah,
don't do titles if that's what you're gonna do.
One thing I loved though about well, at least I thought looked really great was like when when the box is finally going into its Leviathan's phase at the beginning of it, and you see in the background, it's like it's so wonderful to me. It's like as a narrative, it's like that guy's death means f***ing nothing. Yeah. So he's just getting like lifted and like ripped apart, and it's just like everything. Yeah. The one thing I wish it had though, and I think it would have been great, is like out of focus as he's getting all these hooks in him. I would have loved just ripped apart.
Yeah.
So one thing. Yeah. And just like Silent Hill.
Other Hellraiser
movies. I know.
And it's like.
I mean, nothing is more amazing than the beginning of Hellraiser or Hellbound Hellraiser 2, where you see Uncle Frank in the form of his brother, and he's got all the hooks in his face, and he's licking his lips, and he's like, Jesus wept on the cross, and it just gets blown apart. It's like, that's a statement, you know? So I would have loved if, just like at the end of Silent Hill, if like you saw him all hung up and it was out of focus, and then it would have been such an easy effect to just blood everywhere.
Especially because it's out of focus, it's in the background, but your brain is just like, oh God.
It could even look bad. It doesn't matter. Just the fact it does it would have been great.
And for new Hellraiser fans, because there's people who this is their first Hellraiser movie, they would have seen it and been like, ah, shit.
Whoa.
And then it's like, now we are conveying the tone and what this movie's going to look like from the beginning, because that is Hellraiser. You watch a guy get fucking torn to shreds. That happens in Hellraiser.
And I know that like their whole thing is like they want to take you to hell so they can torture you for as long as possible. But it just feels to me like it's kind of like narrative to like visual. It's like for your opening prologue, just because that character means nothing, just do it, because it's like it's gonna be bold and it's gonna stand out.
I am a penitent of the Leviathan. Grant me this audience.
You could even fucking like, because it's weird supernatural shit. You could write in some up shit where it's like, maybe when they tear you apart, you don't die. Now there's some weird supernatural shit's going on. Your pieces are there, and then they sew you back together and they rip you apart again, and that's your misery forever.
The moment you get touched by those torture devices, like you kind of in a way become immortal. It's like you die when we say you die, kind of deal.
They say shit like that in the other Hellraiser. They're like, you can't escape. Like there is no
literally Then in the original one, it's just like Frank escaped you, and it's like, oh, we know Frank. It's like he escaped, and he's just like, no one escapes us, and he's just like, I'll tear your soul apart.
Yeah,
nobody escapes us.
You know, it's stuff like that, and I do like that idea though, and I think it works enough for me that like it didn't have that punch. Well, like we said, horror and comedy are very similar. It's like set up, payoff. That had set up, no payoff, and I was like, oh no, you missed it. You know,
you did mention that it was like, and I think you're right. It is a good character developing moment for like the billionaire, because it's like it shows his nonchalance. Like it doesn't matter. It's very, in terms of like writing
narratively, it
it's like like the chief rule writing is show don't tell, and it does that. It shows you his, rather than him being like, I am a stone cold billionaire who doesn't care. It's like they show you that he's this guy who has no empathy. He doesn't give a He's in it for his own devices.
There's a man dying right behind him. He doesn't.
Yeah, like as far as writing goes, it's good. The filmmaking aspect could have been elevated in that
a little
scene.
bit more.
Yeah.
Just it's just the rule of like openings, you know, like famous openings, like the Dark Knight bank heist or Star Wars Episode 4 with the rebel ship getting attacked. Those are bangs. That's like the best way to establish it's a bang.
You're in.
For Hellraiser, like that would have been a perfect, like you're already interested enough of what's happening, and that would have just been a perfect bang, and it would have been a great setup for the villain, because that's what prologues always do usually as well, is set up your villain. So I would have loved that, but like I said, it's serviceable enough, and I like that there was more thought put into it than just like shot, reverse shot, whatever, get a quick glimpse of the guy getting his face like a hook in it, and then let's move on because we only got 90 minutes, let's go. You know, it never has that feel.
It's interesting you bring that up, because some of the sequences of this movie do feel like that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
They do feel a little more just like we're getting basic cover. Like you said, like that scene, the fact he's in the background, and like that's creative juices are flowing. It's like, how do we portray this in a more interesting way? But there are scenes in the movie, like, I don't know how to describe this, but it almost, this is going to be, it's too extreme of an example, but it's like there's certain scenes in the older Godzilla movies where you see the strings and you see the face through the mask, and then you're like, oh, okay, okay, like now it's like, because like I'll say this, for those old Godzilla movies, for a lot of it you can get immersed and you can get involved and you can like watch, but then occasionally you just have a scene where you're like, oh, that's funny. They never intended it to be seen in 1080p
beautiful
on this, like whatever, and now it's like, okay, I'm losing it. It's hard to look at a person's face and then still try to like whatever. And there's certain scenes in this Hellraiser movie when it's funny that you mentioned, because I think that scene that you mentioned before was done really well in the hospital when the Xenobites first show up. That's really great. Yeah. But then there's one I remember, because I haven't seen the movie in a while, but there's one by like a gate where I think it's that teeth chatter.
Oh, the chatter shows up. Yeah.
And it almost feels like I am a man in a suit and a costume and I'm walking on.
He's walking like C-3PO.
Yeah, you're almost waiting for him to like trip or something, because it's like, I don't know if I would have shot this like this.
They kind of shoot it so like he's always kind of in the distance, and then like they close the gate. This is like towards the end of the movie, but they close the gate, and Riley, our main character, is now going to be
Do they trap
killed.
him?
So the chatter traps them actually. So it's he pushes the gate, and he's like super strong, and then her boyfriend and Riley are there, but they have the puzzle solved, and the knife is there, and what they do is, instead for it being Riley that's going to be victim, they learn that you can actually stab one of them, and then that will be the soul that gets taken away. And then he kind of like walks away, and I like this is when they do rip him apart, then he's like this, and then he just accepts his fate very nonchalantly, and that's the moment like where, to me, I'm like shooting it very like just matter of fact and that wide, and then just watching him just get like ripped to pieces fits his character, because he's like, yep, this is just how it's gonna be. But I agree with you in a way that like the chase scene when they're running away from him, and I'm gonna blame this just on how they decided to make that character move. It's just, it feels very wooden. So it does feel like shot here, shot here, shot here. But what's nice is right before that scene, you get one of probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, where their roommate is kind of tweaking out in the back of the van, and then the Cenobites are just like, yeah, no, she's coming with us, and then the van like stretches out, and then it's like all of a sudden she's in their dungeon, and it was like as they were moving and everything like that, they were like, yeah, no, we have control over this, we'll just take you away, and they weren't paying attention. I really like that, and that has a really nasty scene too, where that was kind of like her first like big kind of like introduction to the priestess Pinhead. Is like she's talking about like desire and power and stuff like that, and she takes out one of her pins, and then she takes and shoves it right through her throat, and you get like an actual, this is such an interesting shot, but you go inside the throat and see it, and you can hear like the waves of her screams and everything like that. And I was like, I like that. That's like the kind of like what you're saying, like really going all out with it. That's an all out.
It's like
moment.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then
if you're gonna do a modern Hellraiser, you want to see stuff like that.
And another thing that was really good in that scene too is the hooks. And this, like, I noticed this, and it made me want to throw up. But I was like, oh god, the hooks weren't just like in her skin; they were like in her nerves. And I was like, oh god, like that is so nasty. And she's kind of like, hanging back like this, and then they like she's almost like this in a way, and it's like just holding up my nerves, and it looks like the most uncomfortable, awkward position. And I was like, everything about that is just makes me want to kill myself because it's like that is a nasty, nasty feel.
And you'll feel it all before we're through.
We're leaving.
The Xenobites are like, they're supernatural. They act, they do things that are not physically possible.
Yeah.
But it's like in this movie, I think maybe a few too many times they feel too much like they're a part of the physical realm. And I think the like Hellraiser 1 and 2, for the most part, they did a very good job of like when they appear, they like float from around a corner, and it's like they just kind of
they have that spiritual element
or
to
whatever.
them.
And it's like they never make the Xenobites like cross distances, because it's like you don't want to see a spirit or whatever unless you're gonna do some like Mama style. You're gonna do some really creepy shit.
Yeah.
You don't want to see Mama like have a little saunter. And so the vibe I get in the movie, not to say this is literally the way it is, but the vibe I get is kind of like there's a Xenobite like hiding behind a tree, and they're like, "Hey, you're on."
Yeah.
And then he clicks a fog machine button, and then it's like, oh, wait for the fog, and then it's like,
Here
and then
comes.
it's like I'm so creepy, and it's like, okay, it's a little, because like the hospital scene you brought up, I think they did a better job of making it kind of feel like they just sort of appeared, and they're just like, and the lighting effect they do. They do this in the other Hellraiser movies, but I'm glad they stuck with this motif. It's like a slated lighting. It almost this image. It's actually like in the first Jurassic Park film when the raptor's in the cage and the lights are slatting through and you don't see the raptor. Yeah. It's like the lights are very similar to that. It's like white light. It's smoky and it's like it's just a cool look.
Yeah.
And in the hospital scene, I think they do it pretty well.
They have like it be like all the lights in the actual building are off, but then there's huge windows that are allowing like natural moonlight to come in, and it just like it looks great.
Yeah.
The biggest issue though, and I'll warn everybody when you're watching this, the movie is very dark in those scenes though. So if your TV, if it's not calibrated correctly, like you won't see anything.
Yeah.
You have to really make sure, like if you're like, wow, I can't see anything, these scenes are so dark, you got to go into your settings and you got to maybe like turn it up or change it a bit because it is super dark. And also like that, I think the Hulu or the Disney, where is it streaming right now? Paramount Plus, the streaming copy that you would be watching on like your streaming service, it's bad because I watched it because I watch it on my because I bought the digital of it and I watched it on there and it was like really dark and I was like, oh God, this doesn't look that good. But then I remember the first time I watched it from the copy that you gave me, which I think it was like a 4K copy of it. It was like a big filed copy. It looked great. I had no issues with that because I heard people say like the movie's so dark and I was like, I never had an issue with that. I never had anything. That it's a movie you got to shut all the lights off and really like allow the TV to light up because you won't know. Like
we were talking about this a while ago, not on a show, but like we're talking about the Matt Reeves Batman movie and like how when you it's like night and day if you try to watch on streaming or you watch like a good 4K like HDR version. Now it's like, oh, this movie's brilliant versus like it's blocky and
bad lighting.
Yeah. And it's like Hellraiser might be, I can't say because I haven't seen the full movie in a while, but it's like maybe it's that same thing where it's like if it was like a 4K HDR like Blu-ray and you're watching it in that, then you'd be like, oh, this looks beautiful.
Great. Yeah.
But like, unluckily streaming just fucks movies sometimes.
It's like the most important HDR is the most important when you have a movie that's like really playing with like the layers of black because it will help separate those blacks. And if you don't have that, you're just gonna be watching it and you guys probably know like when you watch a movie and you're like, oh my God, that black shadow there, I can actually see this jagged outline around that is a even blacker pure thing that's like, I think that's my TV fucking up. And it's like when you watch this street, if you go on Crave or wherever it is and watch the Batman, oh my God, it's like the night chase sequence is like
Crave is the worst.
It's terrible. So it's like so bad. That was the same thing. I have a 4K of Halloween Ends and I watched it on Crave and I actually shut it off and I put on the 4K of that I owned because I was like, half of these scenes look like shit. When they're in the cave or in the sewer, look like crap. So like one thing I just want to mention is that I would really love if Hellraiser, if this movie did come to physical and like a nice 4K, because it's warranted and there is good hope. Prey is coming. And like Disney announced all these new like shows and physical media that is coming to physical media in 4Ks, and I'm really hoping that like it's just right behind there because this was a Hulu original.
I agree. I would love to see this movie in like 4K. The way it's intended to be seen. Like I don't. That is one thing that's really frustrating about seeing movies that are released to streaming immediately is like when I see them, I'm just like, I know this isn't like who the filmmaker. This is not.
You can give them the benefit of the doubt because it's like they're more competent than this. Like this is bad lighting, and there's moments in this movie where, like I would say, like that scene I said, the best scene in the whole movie, when the friend gets taken away from the van and everything like that. If you're watching it on a bad it's a basic 1080p like stream of it, you will be like, I can't see shit. Like it just looks terrible. But then if you watch it with a little more dynamic range and everything like that, it looks great. And everything is separated and shadowed, and it's like, this looks so good. And the set is excellent. And it's not really their fault either. Like you want to have that really nice like moonlight contrast with the pure darks in that like dungeon environment. Like that lighting is great. Like it looks so wonderful. I do love the look of all of the Cenobites in this one. Like I do like how they chose to take away the leather and make their outfits just skin. I do like that. It makes it makes it unique and it looks gross. My favorite one, amazingly, is like this new one that they have where the guy's like arms are like tied like this, and then his skin is like wrapped over his face, and it's like waterboarding him essentially. And what I love about it is he walks, and he kind of just like, he almost walks like those Silent Hill guys and everything. And he walks like that. But what I love is the sound of him like wheezing.
See,
that's such an excellent idea. Like,
and that's a good. It's so interesting that this movie does it right and then does it wrong in the same movie, because it's like you bring up that Silent Hill and that character. Now I'm remembering. Silent Hill has that f***ed up thing. That. Saunters over or whatever, and it moves really awkwardly or whatever.
It's jarring,
but it's very frightening.
Yes,
you're like, I don't get this thing away from me.
Yeah, the thing's creepy.
It's like it's a definition of something that you don't want a fence to all of a sudden hit your back, and that thing's coming towards you, because then you're gonna panic. And it's funny that in Hellraiser they do that. They have like a character that moves in that. That's what they need to do. Like that's the thing. It almost feels like they wanted to reinvent the Xenobites a bit, but then they just didn't go quite far enough. It's like, we're going to do some really inspired creative choices. Like you said, like we're going to take away the leather. We're going to make their skin, their suits. Like that's great. Like whatever. We're going to make some weird choices, like the pearl thing, which I'm not a big fan of, but like, but then it's like, maybe just go a little farther and like make them a little more f***ed up in the way they move and like the way that they
really contorted. Do you love how they incorporate like, they have a bar that's used to wrap skin around so that it holds in place. And there's a lot of like all the other kind of like Xenobites throughout the original movies kind of like played into the designs of this one. So the Asian lady that you see, and she has like the pearls in her and everything like that, she's like a mixture of the bald lady in the first one, like the famous bald one where her throat is like split open. They do it like way crazier, and it looks really great. And then from the fourth one, there's a character who takes like her scalp and then peels it, and then has like these little wires that hold it, and then it's a mixture of that too. So they kind of take two and combine together.
It's interesting because you brought up the one Xenobite, like you said, that I'm like, I think this is what I was looking for. And that character does it. Is, like you said, the new Xenobite that has the skin stretched over its face and it has the noise or whatever.
That's my favorite one.
And I think like just even thinking about that, like the memories I have and like you describing it, I'm like, that's excellent. Like that's where it's like you're taking, like, because like we said, it's like it is very it's pretty brilliant to make their clothes out of their skin, and that like feels very thematically similar or like good, and it feels like an advancement.
You know what's crazy about that too, just to interrupt you, just fun fact here, they were originally supposed to have the leather, and then it was someone's whim idea to say, what if it was just their skin? And that's what led to them having so much open, meaty wounds. And I was like, I think that is like, when you think about like brilliant ideas on set, I think that was a brilliant idea.
It's like,
I really love that idea.
Yeah, I almost want to credit it as brilliant, but to me, I'm like, if you're gonna do a reboot of Hellraiser, you need freshness like that. Because that's the problem. That's where my conflict comes from with this movie, where it feels like it's not fresh enough for me to feel like, well, why didn't we just get D. Bradley Baker?
Why wasn't it just another
Hellraiser in, like, just use them, but do like another big budget, like do basically Hellraiser 5, like the real Hellraiser 5.
I wonder if you'll like, because David Gordon Green is supposed to make a mini series for HBO
of Hellraiser.
Yeah, I wonder if you'll like that.
Because
I bet they'll go more in that way.
Because that's super interesting.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, because now I'm imagining, like, what if I wanted to freshen this up a little bit, what would I have done? And now I'm thinking about, because, like, I brought up the fact that it looks a little weird when they're walking, and like, it's like, now imagine you have Pinhead, but a part of Pinhead's character is, you see on the bottom of his feet is there's pins that go in the feet, and every time Pinhead steps, these things go in, and the whole thing is pain. But and you bring up the skin character, you can hear him physically
he's
like
wheezing,
draining.
like it sounds like he should be dead.
Add the element of them making the sounds of being in pain. Like every time that Pinhead steps, he like something creepy, like some howl that he does because it hurts him physically.
Or if you want to keep the stoic of Pinhead, what you do is it's all in performance. You cut to it, you see that, and you cut to his face, and you can see little twitches of like he is feeling pain. You know what I mean?
Keep the stoicness, like the expression is there, but you just like
our pleasures.
Something haunting. That it's like a sound or something like that. Because like we said, what you could do with Hellraiser to like elevate the out of it, that the first one kind of did, but you could even outdo the first one, make it scary, like have some sound bites, have some stuff in there that's like, it's uncomfortable, I want you to stop moving, please stop making that sound, like I hate that. It's like The Grudge, it's in The Grudge, and when you hear her you're like, I will do anything for you to stop making that sound. Please, it's so uncomfortable.
Well, that's why I love the Vincent's torture device, because if you had a Xenobite that actually had that, can you imagine like you kind of like the lights go out, and because you just saw the box and got pricked by it, and all the lights go on, and then like the room starts changing, and you're kind of staring at this open corridor, and all of a sudden you hear like that machine key in and go, and you're like. And then he like just starts kind of coming out, and he's like holding it, and he's like walking up or starts running up or something like that. It would be a stark like image.
Now that we've brought this up, it's like, to me, just adding that one element could have been the thing maybe that elevated this film to the level where I've been like, okay, this is what I wanted from a new Hellraiser movie. Just adding that, like, what sounds would the Hell Priests make because of their afflictions,
deformities.
Like, how do we convey the fact that, like, we'll show you that they're in pain via their physical realm. Well, they'll tell you that they're in pain and they love pain, but maybe we can convey it via the sounds they make, and like just a little more, whatever. Add, like with the Pinhead character, like I said, I don't. There's a way to do this that would be frightening, but it's like, show the fact that it's like every time Pinhead steps down, there's fucking something going into their feet. There's like like every part of what they each have their motifs with, like the throat and the pins and the whatever, but it's like, use those motifs and expand upon it. Like, show me a little more, like why does the throat one have the throat thing? Get me thinking about it, and like, oh, I hate that. Like, that's up that it wants to do that or whatever. And like the Chatterer, it's like, it's a good image. It's like that, but it's like they never. Why does it look that way specifically? There must be a reason for me to like play around with.
That's the thing I was gonna say, that because like as I said, like this movie really worked for me. Right now I think it has like a 70-something% on Rotten Tomato. I'm like, that's perfect for me. It's above the 50% or 60%. It does a lot of stuff really well, and it works for me. But If it wanted to be like a 90%, I would have gun-hoed all the way with the idea of like, we have to go to this town, to this box, this person, and like as each place we go to, it's solving itself and doing another thing. Like a Smile or the Ring. Because then through that, maybe you can start figuring out who the Xenobites are and learn more about them. And it's like, and that's the focus of it. It's like Pinhead is literally the villain of it. So it's like, how do I stop them? I have to somehow, it's like a race against the clock. This box is going to fucking solve itself basically. And it's like the box is a character in of itself. It wants to be solved, you know, the Ring, it wants to be found. And these are the fucking guys that are going to come and do it. Right. So then it's like, you remember in the Hellbound, the second one, it's like you find out that Pinhead was like a World War I soldier and Chatter was a little kid. And that was so interesting. Yeah. Because I was like, and if you went into that and had it be like this journey kind of like curse movie where you have to solve the mystery of it and these characters came into play, it would have been a very interesting ending to have that kind of like what they did in Hellbound where it's like the redemption arc. And then if you did want to have Vincent still in there, you could just play in the hands of Hellbound where it's like, Pinhead goes and overthrows that Xenobite, you know, his Xenobite. I will say though, with the ending of this movie, I absolutely love the ending of this movie where you watch Vincent's full like transformation into a Xenobite because it does have those moments that you're saying where you feel his pain. It's like peeling his fucking skin away. It like takes his hair and rips and he's like, oh, and you see his eyes fill with black and it's like this ultimate ascension. And it does an excellent job making it feel almost alien. And I was like, I love this. This is so good. Yeah. I think the movie, it's really funny. Good, really, like the bookends of it are excellent. Like they're really strong to me. Yeah. And then there's stuff in the middle that I do really love. But yeah, like I said, the house reminds me of like 13 Ghosts and it's got the cage on it and everything to keep them out. I love that. I think that's an element that was in Hellraiser 4. So yeah, there's like, they play with all the ideas of it, but I do agree, like the idea of making this better. There is a movie, like it's kind of like paving the road for another person to come in and be like, the Hellraiser movie was pretty good, but you know what we could do? We could make this thing like a fucking nightmare. Like we could really make this scary.
Now that I think about it, and I think it's too bad. But I think the problem is that I'm having is there are properties that are so basic in their formulation, like Halloween, where it's it's so simple that it's like you need to do very few things correctly for me to be like, this is a good Halloween movie and I enjoy this Halloween movie. You don't really need to do anything too crazy
it's
for
a very
me to be
basic
like,
formula.
this is good. Yeah. And then you can elevate it in little, it's easy to elevate those movies to like,
something beyond that.
Hellraiser, however, is so
imaginative
and brilliant. And it's like, there's so much potential with the idea that seeing an adaptation that doesn't try to delve into the lore. How much it's such a canvas that you could just do some really crazy, scary, excellent things with. And if I see a Hellraiser film where I don't get that feeling where it's like you had it's like this is going to be an obscure reference, but there's an anime show that I love called Zoids New Century Zero. And a part of that show, it's like a show where a guy rides a mech that looks like an animal. Yeah. But anyways, like a big part of that show is they keep talking about this limitless potential the two characters have. Like there's so much potential. And like in the show, it keeps you invested because you're like, I can't wait to see, like everybody talks about this potential these two have. And I'm reminded of Hellraiser where it's like Clive Barker is brilliant and he created this universe that has limitless potential in terms of like how somebody with fresh eyes could take it and then just tweak it in ways and like add to it to make it like we said, like actually really scary or really whatever. And I guess that's the problem is like every time I hear that a Hellraiser, especially this one in particular, because obviously there was a lot of dross that came out that was pretty low budget, whatever.
Garbage.
But hearing that there's going to be this reboot of Hellraiser, it's like this is going to be like it's gonna have a budget and it's gonna have like good actors and it's gonna have like whatever. It's like the butterflies, the child in me that has his hopes and dreams have been dashed his whole life was just like, yes, maybe they're gonna do something crazy. Yeah. And then I saw the new Hellraiser movie, and like I said, it's like nothing about it is bad. Like even the critiques I brought up are like pretty small little things.
It's quite nitpicky.
Yeah,
like to be honest,
they're nitpicky things, and it's like you watch it and like, but
it's what prevents it from being a 90.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what
the thing.
I mean?
Is like I saw it and I'm like I said to you, I'm like, there's no reason this couldn't have been a D. Bradley Baker Hellraiser movie. Yeah. There's nothing in this that they did where it's like this needed to be a new a reboot.
I will say I will absolutely agree with the casting of Jamie Clampton. I think that's her name, the transgender woman, because in the book and in this bad boy right here, whatever, fuck blah, it does explain the look of Pinhead, and at first there's a confusion. They see it and it's like comes off feminine, but then when they talk, it's masculine, so it has to be a man. They don't know. And I think that was a very wise choice. And even Doug Bradley was like, she did a good job. I think she did do a good job.
I agree.
I think that she was really solid. I like the raspiness of her voice. I think she delivers her lines well.
Of regret. Knowing everything you've done. Everyone you've hurt.
There is this almost like blank slate of her that works perfectly for Pinhead. However, when you compare it to Doug.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
It's very difficult because it is like kind of comparing Nicholson to Heath Ledger, but like when you do look at them almost side to side, and maybe I'll do a little example here with it, but it's like she comes off in this way that feels like a little unnatural and weird and it kind of can creep you out a bit. And then Doug is this fucking presence.
And like
owns everything.
He's like, that is a hell priest.
Yeah.
That is the hell god.
When you think about a priest going in and giving, your Sunday mass, he is in control of the room. Yeah. And yeah, Doug Bradley is like the arch fucking bishop. He comes in and he's like, I will fucking tear your soul apart.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Yes, it's absolutely brilliant.
Like this actress did such a good job. And in the movie that I'm describing, this Hellraiser movie that was, she is the perfect cast for this reimagining. But it almost feels like this movie has one leg, or more than that, like almost like a whole is in those D. Bradley Baker movies, and they're trying to keep two.
They wanted the best of both worlds. They wanted their cake and eat it too. They were pushing to do stuff new, and you can see it. Like everything about it, like I said, it's like the whole, when you look at it, it looks like a completely different movie, but all of the same basic story beats are there. You look at the Xenobites, and you're like, wow, they look so unique. But they are referenced to a lot of other ones that we have. They're consistently holding themselves back for like, you and I talked about with Twisted Metal, it's like fan service done right. I think that one Xenobite being the combination of two very iconic Xenobites, more than enough to be like fan service done right than every other one you can really experiment with.
And I'll say this might be a weird thing to say, and now that you say that in that way, it makes me think about this. Is Hellraiser the type of franchise where we need fan service? Would we rather see Hellraiser interpreted again? And like, do we have to have Pinhead in a Hellraiser film, or could we have a Hellraiser where we're going to fucking rebuild this from the ground up, and we're going to try to come up with some fresh imagery for you guys?
I think
that it stays true to the like you said, with, there's a lot of it, like spiritually, you can have it feel like a Hellraiser film. Yeah. But do we have to see Pinhead? Do we have to have this? Like, because at that point, it almost feels like you're just checking off the boxes. Yeah. And why do a reboot? Why not just do a continuation of that? Like, even do a recast. Like, I don't even mind. Recast the whatever. Yeah. And like, but for all intents and purposes, this movie just feels like a continuation, a recasted continuation of the D. Bradley Baker films. It doesn't feel like anything.
It doesn't feel like a whole new vision.
And if anything, it almost, in some aspects, especially with the gore, it feels...
tone back
a bit in certain
there's some
spots.
Good, like I said, there are some good like subtle gore moments, but there's nothing there is nothing like the Frank regeneration. That is like a whole other movie. And anything really that appears in like Hellbound, there's scenes in Hellbound, and maybe it's the visions of hell and everything like that, where, do you remember the scene where it's like the main character is in the house and it's like covered in blood, and then she goes and sees Uncle Frank in hell, and he's got all those women in the cloaks and everything as all of his victims and stuff like that. That is such a wonderful representation of like what I imagine when I'm reading Clive Barker, like fantasy, his horror fantasy novels, because it's like, that is fucking creepy. And it reminds me of like the Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn movie, The Cell, where it's like, what is it like going into the mind of a serial killer? When you go into hell, it is just everyone's own personal hell. So it's like, you're going literally into the minds of the worst people ever. let's experiment with that. So I would love
Now
the
it's
idea.
like Silent Hill-y. Like,
Yes. And that's the thing. The box is your Silent Hill, and then you bring in a new story each time.
It's funny because you brought us on Hill before. The Silent Hill movie is almost a better Hellraiser remake or reboot. Obviously there's so much.
Oh, there's so much.
Like,
yeah.
But it's like, dude, you have the chains. You have there's so much stuff
shit in there
that is Hellraiser-esque. Yeah. That is like, and I'm assuming like the video game makers probably owe a lot to Clive Barker when they made Silent Hill. But it's like, in my head, I'm like, almost, dude. It's like the Silent Hill movie that came out in 2006 is a better reboot of Hellraiser than Hellraiser 2022. And like I said, I don't not like Hellraiser 2022.
No, it is.
It was nice to see new Hellraiser.
It may sound like it's funny. It's a spotlight. It may sound like we're being very overly critiqued. That's why I was like, I think a lot of stuff in this movie was done very well. I really enjoyed it. It's just like, we can't critique it on any of the basic things that you would usually critique, like story structure or this or that, because that's all done very well. You had competent filmmakers making this movie, and it was made very well. It's like, what makes Hellraiser in 1986, I believe is when it came out, what makes that stand out more than 99% of horror movies? There's this flair to it. And that's the one thing with this one that doesn't have. This is a very clean movie. And when you watch it, it's just like how I said, like, it feels like a 90s movie. 90s and early 2000s weren't the best years for horror. That's not saying I don't like this movie or I don't like those movies, but it's because they were very generic. They'd be like, okay, this is where we are right now. Creepy ghost man, but it's not creepy. It's just over the top looking. And then we put him in this like gimmicky scenario. And then everything is shot very stylistically, and there's no actual focus on scaring the audience. It's kind of like a roller coaster. That's more like what it is. Like kind of like an action film in a way. It's like a roller coaster. And this movie has those elements where they do try to kind of build the tension a bit more, but it does feel like it's just plopped right out of the 90s and early 2000s. Whereas like that Silent Hill, that 2006 Silent Hill movie, there's shit in that movie that's scary.
Disturbing.
Like actually
and would fit
scary.
Into a Hellraiser.
That's why I'm so excited that he's making another Silent Hill movie. I cannot wait. Exciting. And it's based on the second game. Fingers crossed that one just is outstanding. So. But with Hellraiser, it's like Clive Barker, we were talking about with Midnight Meat Train. He has this flair that not every filmmaker is able to kind of like bring into this adaptation, because it's hard. It's like picking the right fruit, and it's like, to me, it's like David Bruckner delivered a very clean presentation that I enjoyed a lot, but if I was to say which one am I going to put in, Hellraiser or Hellraiser 2022, it will absolutely be Hellraiser 86 or 84, because it just has that extra flair. I mean, like the kind of joke is like it has the 80s cocaine. You know, it's got that in it.
They went for it.
Yeah, they went crazy.
Yeah, like it didn't feel like they were scared. It felt like, no, let's not be scared. Let's be the opposite of scared. Let's be brave. Let's show off. Let's do some crazy shit.
For 1980, it's insane that movie exists.
That's the thing.
It's fucking crazy.
Part of
and was really a success.
It's almost impossible to do. There was some reboot of something recently that had this problem where people expected it to be like this, but it's like you have these. There are films and books and video games that come out, and they have this cultural impact. And Hellraiser, you look at the first Hellraiser movie, and like you said, if you fucking saw that movie when it came out, you would have been like, I don't want to watch movies. I don't want to watch movies anymore. Yeah. This is too fucked up.
Yeah.
We've gone too far. I don't want to see this shit. That's the reaction. It's like your mindset going into a modern day Hellraiser movie should kind of be, we want to elicit a similar reaction from audiences today. And and that's the thing. I think about the 2006 Silent Hill movie, and I remember when I saw it, and even some of the stuff today, I'm like, this imagery is f***ed. Like, this is uncomfortable.
Hellraiser, to me, when I think about something in Hellraiser, like that pseudo-sexual psychological thriller, the idea of a woman being physically attracted and wanting to lust for a man who has literally no skin, and it's like you're watching almost the skinned corpse having sex.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
That is fucking
Super disturbing.
disgusting.
Yeah.
That is creepy, and
you need that shit.
Yeah, you need shit like that
because it's like it's the type of stuff where you see it and then you might recommend it and then you have normie friends and then you'll be like, maybe you shouldn't watch this.
Yeah, it's one of those things
like,
that like
maybe I don't want you to know that I enjoy this kind of f***ed up shit or whatever.
Yeah, you forget about that scene, or like the scene, it feels so normal that when it comes on, you're like,
right.
Yeah,
that's shit. That was weird. That's weird. Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
And it's just like, is everything okay?
And that's what Clive Barker shit is.
That's what it is.
It's like you private. You keep it to yourself.
It's kind of like, there's this one book that's really like, you must have, I wonder if you read this book, short story, famous, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Oh yeah.
That feels like it could have been a Clive Barker story.
That almost feels,
it's very interesting.
That feels more fucked up than Clive. That
I was going
like
to say, that is
Clive
like
Barker's dark older brother.
Yes, it is like
sci-fi.
It is such a disturbing story. Like the idea of like, they're up in like this Arctic blowing area and they have no fucking clothes on. They're just naked and it's just like their skin is peeling away, but the AI refuses to let them die. That is what I want to see with like a Pinhead and the Xenobites. I want to see more than just the chains.
Yeah,
I would love to see like, okay, it sounds crazy. It goes into Saw a little bit, but I would like to see a little bit more of an experimentation with that. I would love the idea of them being these like keepers of pain and suffering, but also like journey, like archaeologists, where they're searching deeper through the body to see how far you can go with pain and suffering. There's this like f***ed up movie called The Men Behind the Sun, and it's like so it's like a movie about like all the experiments that were done during World War II in Japan and stuff like that, where they would like shove a woman's hand in liquid nitrogen and then smash it and be like, took 4 seconds for it to be completely smashed. I would like to see the Xenobites go down territories like that. So it's like, we have you now. Now here is like 5 minutes of some of the most brutal torture you could ever imagine. Like, and it's creative and it really goes out there.
That's a really good idea.
Yes.
Because like the one thing that the original Hellraisers don't show you really, because they're all about like, we're gonna say not tell.
Yes.
And it's like, I think to a degree it's
Show
because
not tell,
they came out when they did and they couldn't really
There's
do it effectively.
budgetary reasons for sure.
But yeah, it's like if you're gonna bring Hellraiser into the modern day, why not show us that bit? It's like when the Hell Priests get you, this is what they fucking do to you. And then when our lead character is like, you're like, for the love of God, I don't want this character to get
run
caught.
away.
Yeah, like now you're invested or whatever. So like that's like a whole. So I agree that,
and it would be very.
That's a cool way.
And also going into what this movie did, it would have been. Imagine if you did that. That's what this movie was. And then that scene when they find out that revelation, when they find out that if they stab one of the Xenobites, now that actually is the new blood that gets taken away. Imagine having another like torture scene with that Xenobite, but he is enjoying it. There's like this up sensation of pleasure.
The last scene in the movie is like, let's say we'll just use Pinhead. It's like, and then you use the example of like the blizzard, like the walking through the infinite blizzard. Yeah. But it's just Pinhead like laughing maniacally, enjoying the suffering.
You could play into like the Terminator 2 where he's walking, his bones are literally freezing, and every step he takes, you can actually see like his skin like ripping off. Oh, you know, like how if you run through snow, the bottoms of your feet rip to shreds and everything. You see blood behind him. You see that. You see like maybe his clothes, like if he had, let's say he has the skin on, right? You see the clothes kind of like freezing and break off. And then you can see some of his restraints that are like breaking off. Maybe the pins and everything like that are kind of like freezing around him. Oh my God.
That's the thing.
Like, it would be so fucked. Oh, his eyes. You could have his eyes actually go all red down here and everything. And then like when he's like blinking, this is a good scene. He blinks and then they rip open and then he rips his eyelids to shit. Oh my God. And then he's like screaming, but it sounds like a laugh scream. Like, and it cut to a wide and he's on this mountain and then Hellraiser, the fucking end. Hell froze over.
Because like to me it's like that's what it needs. It's like now we've elevated, we've taken this idea, and then we've tried to modernize it and we've tried to elevate it, and like, it's like now when you say that I'm super interested in that movie. And that's like, to bring it back to the Hellraiser we did get. It feels like if on a scale of 1 to 10, if on a knob at 1 to 10, it was like 5 is serviceable. This feels like 6. Maybe.
I put it to the 7. I think that 70% is like a solid thing. It's got just enough in it that makes me go like, you did something interesting, but you didn't go into the brutality. Like you really didn't let your fantastical mind play with it. It feels like David Bruckner, I think, is really good at doing stuff like The Ritual, something that's set in real life, and then you have this one fantastical element into it, and that's it. Same with like
that's the thing is like I wonder because we talked about Silent Hill, and now I'm like, and we've talked, you and I talk about this sometimes about how like who's the right man for the job, and it's like maybe this guy wasn't the right man for this property. Like he's a brilliant director. Like I said, I love The Ritual. It's a great film. It's like I want to see more of that kind of thing.
He's a very underestimated director.
Yeah, from this guy. Yeah. But then it's like we talk about Silent Hill, and it's like that seems like a match made in heaven. Like get that guy doing a Hellraiser film.
Christoph Gaines would be maybe the best for a Silent Hill movie. I mean, like he is
a Hellraiser movie.
Or sorry, Hellraiser movie. Yeah, he was the best for a Silent Hill movie. To me, it's like we got the well put together, very, very like well structured, almost like James Wan-y kind of Hellraiser movie. Now I do want to see like a disgusting, very unique, like it sounds crazy, but like a Clive Barker one. I want to see like a Clive Barker with a big budget, which we did get with Hellraiser or Hellbound Hellraiser 2, but like in a modern day where like there is like the shit, the shit that people put in movies now is wild. There is no, you don't have to worry about video nasties anymore. In the 80s, you did, you know what I mean? Like they were just coming out of it. So it's like nowadays you can get away with anything. The only thing is trying to get it into mass audience. But if it's NC-17 and you are Netflix, then you put it on Netflix.
And there's so many ways to like push that.
Oh yeah, you can, like the fact that Evil Dead 2013 is rated R is wild. Yeah. Like that is
you
wild.
Watch a woman face another woman with a fucking chainsaw for like 3 minutes.
Exactly. You see like a tree literally like in a more like realistically gross way raping a woman. It's like that movie is one of the hardest R's I've ever seen in my life. That is wild. So it's like Hellraiser, like you, and almost it would be good publicity. It's like you got the rating, it's an NC-17. That's a good sign, you know, like so.
You've been living in a dream world.
David Bruckner, you did a fine job with this movie. Actually, I'd say you did a damn good job with this because this could have been horrible. Like
I'll say it's probably the best Hellraiser movie that David Bruckner could
ever make. Yeah, with his team and everything like that.
It might just not be the right property for his particular talents.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like if this had a different. This is like one of those movies again where it's like Child's Play remake, really wonderful, fun, satirical film. Biggest fault is it's called Child's Play. If this movie wasn't Hellraiser, they just changed a few things to make it not. It was kind of just like inspired. There would be very little issues. Like you would, all of our nitpicks would actually disappear, and that movie would be maybe more. of an 80.
It's like it's the problem is the potential of the property.
The source material is too strong.
Yeah, and it's like that. And so when it's probably my fault, but it's like when I walk into a Hellraiser movie or a new Hellraiser movie that's the reboot or whatever, my brain is going to be like, what am I in for? Like, am I in for something really fucking incredible?
It's like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah. And it's like, and I don't get that feeling with Halloween, for instance. Like, I don't go to a Halloween movie this is going to be the fucking be-all, end-all. Yeah. And I think about Halloween and I'm like, honestly, if there was a new fan that'd never seen Halloween before, I'd be like, dude, you could watch the Rob Zombie 2007 one.
Oh yeah.
You could watch the original. You could even watch the first one of the new franchise. And like they're all good, serviceable, really good Halloween movies. And I wouldn't mind that. But it's like with this, I'd be like, you need to, if somebody's like, I want to watch Hellraiser, you got to watch the first one.
Yeah, just got to watch the first one.
You have to watch the first one. It's going to blow your mind.
To me, it's a double feature. You watch the first one, then you go right after and watch Hellbound because it's like, did you like that? Yeah, let's go crazier. This is it with money, like, you know?
But it's like, so no, you're never going to be, we're never going to be like, yeah, the 2022 one does Hellraiser justice. Like,
no. I think it's like as a studio looking for a quality movie, it does it justice. Yeah. If you're a horror fan that wants entertainment with like good, interesting, like something a little different than what we're getting all the time now, it does that. But when you're comparing it to like one of the most creative, if not maybe the most creative horror mind out there, like when it comes to fantastical horror, it's hard. And it's like, it is almost an unwinnable task. Like, as I said, I'm like, if Clive Barker didn't do Hellraiser 1, I just don't think that movie would even be considered to be
I agree.
a good movie.
It would have had no.
There would nothing.
It wouldn't have the legs. It
no,
did, yeah.
it's because they had that original vision, and that's the thing I'd like to say is like the Hellbound Heart, the book that it's based off of. Very faithful adaptation. Mostly everything is the same. It's like it's a very simplistic movie and it's a very simplistic book. But there's so much that's given to you with the ideas that your brain runs wild and it becomes much more in depth and creative. And Clive Barker, he even like even his other like big, more fantasy kind of like epic stories tie in with the Xenobites and stuff. I can't remember. He has this one that's kind of like it's kind of like the Dark Tower in a way.
Yeah.
And it's like
Stephen Kingy,
kind of Stephen Kingy, where it's like this fantasy and it's like a priest or like an exorcist, and it does reference that Xenobites are there and like Pinhead is there, so there is that own world. Like he's so creative. If you read like I would definitely just like go and find Clive Barker's works, because your brain, when you read what he conjures up, it is like, whoa, like
a lot
this
of
is fucking crazy.
Short form, so it's good.
Really
it's very
nice.
digestible.
And then if you ever read his like long form novels and everything, they're epics. So imagine watching like Lord of the Rings, but like it's Clive Barker. It's really fucking crazy. So it's really wonderful. I do love that.
I think what you said before is a good summary, where it's like, this movie is the difference. This is what this movie is. If somebody came to you and said, I want to see a good horror movie, you could be like, hey, yeah, watch Hellraiser 2022.
Yes.
If somebody came to you and said, I want to see a Hellraiser movie,
A unique experience. Yes.
I'm probably not going to point you towards Hellraiser 2022.
No.
I'm going to point you to the OG one.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, and the difference, like I brought up Halloween before. If somebody was like, I want to see a Halloween movie, there's a few movies that I could be like, this is a good Halloween movie. This is a good Halloween. Any of these movies are going to give you the Halloween experience. Hellraiser, especially when you look at that first one, it's like there's that first one. The second one's different, but it's like as a starting off point.
Yeah.
And you want to get into Hellraiser, I'm sorry, I'm gonna point you to the Hellraiser. And I'm not that kind of snob either.
No.
I'm not the guy who's like, it has to be I'm not the guy who puts the 1954 Godzilla at the list of number one top 10 Godzilla movies. I'm not that guy. Like those, like so many do that. It's like they just do it.
This is the best because it's classic.
It's the first one or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not that guy, but it's like with Hellraiser, just like like I said, it's like the closest that franchise has gotten to tapping that potential fully has been when Clive Barker did the original.
It's when he was there. Yeah. I mean, he even was like part of, I believe he helped write Hellbound, because he didn't direct Hellbound. And also, I'm actually okay that he didn't direct Hellbound, because it might have been too big for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Stumble upon
I agree,
it.
yeah.
Because like Hellbound is basically like the first 20 minutes is Hellraiser 1. And then when they go to hell, that's when that movie's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, like this is good. That's the closest we've ever gone to the epic form of Clive Barker on screen. And it is an experience. Like it is a wonderful movie to watch. I would say that like for me, if I was like kind of leading somebody in like you were kind of doing with Hellraiser movies, I would actually almost say like, okay, if you want to be like eased into Hellraiser, let's watch Hell on Earth first, because it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's just such a fun slasher movie.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay.
We'll introduce you to the characters.
Yeah. Did you like that? Okay, let's go back and watch the
prequel.
The one that's gonna make you want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
The one that's really gross.
That's
and then
funny.
they'll watch and be like, "What? Pinhead's only in it for like 15 minutes, but Uncle Frank is the most sinister man ever made." Like it's like Uncle Frank is more evil than Bagul from Sinister. Like,
Oh yeah, Bagul.
Bagul. Yeah,
Cut
Uncle
Bagul out of Sinister and the
Frank.
movie's better.
Yeah. Sinister 3, Uncle Frank.
Yeah, Uncle Frank.
Let's get you, Scott Derrickson. Let's bring you back. Let's get you in here. So, yeah, no. David Bruckner's Hellraiser, it is a good movie. I would recommend it if you want to watch it, but it's in the mindset of what you're looking for. If you are looking for something that's going to make you sick and scared, like if you're like, I want a new Clive Barker movie, it's not for you. But if you want if you're looking for like a pseudo James Wan Hellraiser movie, it is for you. That is what that movie is.
It's funny. This franchise is like you have this 18-year-old kid and he's NHL level talented.
Yeah.
And then, but he's like in the WHL, or he's in the league below, and he's just lighting it up. He's doing so good, and he's like, "Are you proud of me, Dad?" And I'm like, you got more in you, son.
Yeah.
Like, son, I know there's greatness in you. There's a Stanley Cup in your future. I know it. I can see it. We gotta get that one. It's like, and that's what this Hellraiser feels like. It's like, this movie is like,
it achieves so much more than others do. But
there's an NHL level, Fran, like, property here, and then it's like I'm getting WHL level talent, and I'm seeing that performance. I'm like, there's more there. You can do more with this.
You're comfortable in your WHL area, but like, I see the NHL in you, son.
Son, please.
That's what I know. Next time
you can do it.
It is just. I talk like it's lots of people I talk about Clive Barker with. It always comes up where it's just like even constantly like mirroring what we said. It's just like. His concepts are just so unique. There really is nothing like it. And I kind of wish that Clive Barker just, I wish he had a little bit more talent as a filmmaker and like really stuck with making movies more, because now a ripe Clive Barker making movies would be like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like what he could accomplish in his visions, and his name having a little bit more clout would be truly amazing. But I think the smartest thing to do is to always, kind of like with George Lucas with Star Wars, bring him into the writer's room. You know what I mean? And see what he throws at the table, and then have people that just have the balls to not say, that's too crazy. Like keep them in there.
I wonder if it's more like a Peter Jackson, J.R.R. Tolkien situation where it's like, you need the guy who's going to adapt this, who's like,
you just need that right guy
who's like, whatever. But I agree with you. I love Clive Barker to death, and I wish he would live forever and keep writing stories. And like, I agree with you 100%. Like, I love him so much as just a creative.
I would love to just see like I would love if like at the end, credits, the end credits of a Hellraiser movie be like torture scene number 1. Creatives that came up with it. Torture scene number 2, creatives that came up with it. That would be so wonderful to see. Like Clive Barker has a new creative torture scene in this new Hellraiser film. And it's just like, ooh,
I get
that would be interesting.
That's what you want to see. Like almost you want to see Clive Barker. It's like how I don't give a what James Cameron has to say anymore when he talks about a Terminator movie. It feels like he's removed. Like, I think this Terminator movie is the best one since 2, and it's like,
cash the check,
dude,
move
why
on.
You say this? Like it means nothing now. You said that. You said
that about Genesis.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's such a bad movie. So it's like now it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But maybe Clive Barker can be the guy that he comes out when he says this Hellraiser movie. Couldn't have like says like that, and then it's like. Now you got me. See in the marketing.
You've got me on the ropes right now. It's like, let's see if
your words still mean something. Yes, Barker,
because he doesn't come out all the time. I mean, shit. Even like Midnight Meat Train, he didn't. That's just based off the story. He had nothing to do with that, and he was at the Comic-Con convention when they first distributed it because clearly he cared about what was going on. Yeah. So like to me, I agree with you. It's just like. Maybe there is that one guy, and I think it's a foreigner. I don't think it's an American now.
We were talking about the Silent Hill guy.
Yeah, that Christoph Gaines, or maybe some wild Korean dude,
fucked up Korean guy,
or Japanese or Asian or whatever. I mean, when you look at like, it was such a wonderful match in heaven with Midnight Meat Train with that guy, and I was just like. Maybe it's just not here. Maybe his stuff is like America's reserve on sexuality and everything. Maybe you just need a foreign guy out there who doesn't see sex as some sort of like, I don't know, held above thing. And he's willing to take a human body and mutilate it, and like really put a fucked up vision onto screen because it's hard. Like, you need people that are creative and psychotic in a way. It's just like you need somebody who is, I'm willing to go and think about these very f***ed up things, but embrace it without being a complete psychopath. Well, guys, that was our Clive Barker extravaganza. Just wanted to kind of showcase these two movies, and I just felt like, because so many things were talked about of Hellraiser, I just felt like if we were going to do the remake, it would just dive into a big comparison of like everything that Hellraiser is. Because if we just talked about normal Hellraiser, it never would have brought up the remake. But talking about the remake, we get to recommend a movie that I think deserves a recommendation, but then explain to you in this Clive Barker two-parter why Clive Barker is so unique and interesting. And we didn't even talk about Candyman. You know what I mean? Like, there's still a whole thing to dive into. And that's worth the spotlight in of itself, that remake and the original Candyman, because they're just so unique. And that's that's another direction director that got it. You know what I mean? With that original one, at least. He got that nice feel with it, and then also took that little story and just made one of the most unique movies ever. So, well, thank you everybody for our spotlight. And once again, guys, if you're having difficulty with women, go on to Amazon and buy this and go up to them
or
anywhere and do do
if you don't want to buy that, there's also this art book that you can get. This will also that'll drop the ladies.
You guys,
if you just say if you're in a bar,
if you show her,
you just say David Lynch. A woman will come home with you.
This is David Lynch's fucked up collage work, and I guarantee you, show one image of this to her, and you will be going home in a police car.
You don't need to hit the gym.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
You don't need a charismatic. None of that bullshit.
No.
Walk into your local bar.
Yeah.
Find the first baddie you see. Just go up to her and say, "Hey, David Lynch."
Yeah.
Well,
that was a good day.
Boom, baby. I think they're around 145. Yeah. It's like beautiful. Yeah, my ass.